Let me take this opportunity to thank International Action Network on Small Arms, IM Sweden, and UN Women South Africa Regional Office for partnering with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in organizing this virtual meeting under the topic, Silencing the Guns and Ending Gender-Based Violence, Women, Peace and Security, to give impetus to the effort toward African Union theme for this year, which is silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africans' development. As well as linking it to the fight against gender-based violence and women, peace and security agenda, we meet under the very difficult condition following the President's declaration of a national state of disaster in terms of Disaster Management Act on the 23rd March 2020, and announced that a national lockdown will be effected from midnight on the 26th of March 2020. Since then, South Africa joins the rest of the world in developing innovative ways to carry on with our work, keeping social distance, wearing masks, and sanitizing to manage the disease, protect the people of the country, and reduce the impact of the virus on society and economy. This webinar form part of a series of nationwide activities organized to commemorate Women's Month in August, the theme of which is Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Right for an Equal Future. President Ramaphosa, when assuming the chairship of the African Union on the 9th February 2020, stated that violence against women continues to range on our continent and call on the member states to the AU to make a contribution to promote peace and security in our collective effort to silence the guns. The campaign on silencing the guns in Africa by 2020 aims to achieve a conflict-free Africa, prevent genocide, make peace and reality for all, and rid the continent of wars, violent conflict, human rights violation, and humanitarian disasters. Although women and girls are much less likely to be victims of homicide than men and boys, 19% of homicide victims globally are female. They bear the greatest burden of intimate partners, family-related homicide, and intimate partners homicide. Of the 97,000 women murdered across the world in 2017, the most recent year for which data are available, more than half, which is 58% or 50,000, were killed by intimate partners or other family members, and more than a third, which is 30,000, were killed by their current or former intimate partners, someone they would normally trust. In 2016, the United Nations Human Rights Commission described violence against women and girls in South Africa as widespread at a high level and normalized, noting that the country has one of the highest rate of homicide of females in the world. A 2009 national femicide study showed that while national femicide rate has declined from 1999, intimate partners violence had risen in this time to become the leading cause of death for women, and 57% of female homicide in 2009 were committed by an intimate partner, up from 50% in 1999. Though the researchers note that these figures are likely to be higher, as in over 20% of femicide in 2009, no perpetrators was identified. Peace and security will silence the guns, but how can peace and security be made to last? It's not only the misuse of guns by individual civilians that need to be silenced, including criminal gangs. Such violence occurs both homes and communities of South Africa. They are all prevalent in all the 9 provinces. In August 2019, 93 women were shot and killed, an average of 3 women a day. To give a face, a name, a story to this number, to this horror, Gun Free South Africa collected information on just 21 women who were shot and killed last year to symbolize the number of women shot and killed in 1 week in South Africa. While these 21 women's stories were being profiled, the killing continued. Also published on the 1st of September 2019 were the following 3 shootings. One is the 6-year-old Natalia Pinar, died in hospital after she was shot while playing outside in Lavender Hill. She was caught in the crossfire and was still holding onto her skipping rope when her family found her in the street just a minute later. South Africa female boxing champion, Baby Lee Jengels, was shot dead by her police officer boyfriend, against who she had a protection order. A 39-year-old woman was shot in the head by a strange husband as she tried to pick up some of her belongings at his house in Summerstrand. The couple's 3 children, aged 2, 7, and 10, were present during the incident. While South Africa Firearms Controls Act of 2000 has provisions that allow the police and courts to remove a gun from a violent individual, which prohibit violent individuals from accessing guns, these are not being uniformly implemented. How can African countries, in cooperation with the international community, help prevent guns being used for gender-based violence? And why is this strategically important? By gender-based violence, we mean violence based on gender discrimination, such as rape, enforced prostitution, human trafficking, enslavement, and other forms of sexual violence, as well as extrajudicial executions, disappearance, physical assault, harassment, humiliation, and denial of fundamental human rights based on the victim's gender identity. The AU's agenda for silencing the guns has the laudable ambition to end all wars and manage and prevent civil conflict and gender-based violence effectively in the continent. Agenda 2063 provides that in order to achieve sustainable conflict prevention and resolution, a culture of peace and tolerance must be cultivated and nurtured in our children and youth, among others. Through peace education. Moreover, the African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights is expected to participate in regular consultation with the Peace and Security Council of the AU, the agenda of which should include an overview of human rights issues on the continent and the right of women, girls, and children in armed conflict. Beyond this formal commitment, there are strategic reasons to address a gender-based armed violence in all contexts, not only in armed conflict. One reason is that toxic masculine culture which often glamorized weapons and assumes men have a special right to use violence and abuse women and girls, amplifies demand for guns, especially by naive young men. In Africa, this toxic masculinity interacts with cultures of traditional weaponry, such as spear, axes, bow and arrows, slingshots, and others, used for hunting in many areas. When firearms and ammunition becomes easily available, a culture of guns can emerge that interacts with the cultures of toxic masculinity and abuse. Given that absolute level of poverty in Africa are on average the highest in the world, and our government often commit human rights violation and engage in corruption practices, it's easy to see how the unauthorized transfers, possessions, and use of guns can spiral. Adding to that dangerous mix is the marginalization of women's leadership and their role in arms control and disarmament, which undermines understanding of gender-based violence and how to tackle all its forms. While policies are in place, they are not being uniformly implemented. Below is a summary of 3 urgent actions to protect women from gun violence. Immediately remove firearms incident of IPV. This requires that magistrates and police officers be proactive and always ask about the presence of gun and ensure its removal when dealing with or responding to violent or firearm-related offenses, even when victims do not request this. This, in turn, requires training through police and justice colleges. A gun owner who is declared unfit surrenders all licenses, firearms, and ammunition. This requires coordinations of processes within the criminal justice system to ensure that court orders declaring a gun owner unfit to own a firearm actually lead to the physical surrender of licenses, firearms, and ammunition. Police officers dealing with firearms-related issues are empowered with knowledge, skills, and resources. This will ensure that the DFOs can undertake thorough background check of firearms-related applicants and motivate why they have declared firearm license applicants unfit for gun ownership. So these declarations are not overturned by the Firearms Appeals Board. Lastly, much greater attention needs to be given to addressing the gender dimensions of the problem of guns and abuse of guns. In particular, measures must be taken to reduce the role of toxic masculinity in driving unnecessary demand for guns, and to fully implement the Firearms Control Act to prevent gun loss, stolen, and from fueling gender-based violence by men. An important way to achieve this is to overcome the marginalization of women's leadership and their role in guns control and disarmament. In conclusion, Program Director, I would like to ask everyone with a face mask to put it on at this moment to remember all victims of gun violence. This campaign will end on the 31st of August 2020 with people wearing this mask in 5 different areas at 12 noon to call on all South Africans to end gender-based violence. I thank you.